This podcast is funded by Ted Dintersmith, the executive producer of the acclaimed film Most Likely to Succeed, and the author of the best-selling book, What School Could Be.
Hey everyone, welcome to the What School Could Be podcast. I'm your host, Josh Rapoon. Before we start the show, please check out all the resources at whatschoolcouldbe.org and our global online community. If you are a committed education change agent ready to roll up your sleeves and reimagine teaching and learning, simply install the What School Could Be app on your mobile device or navigate to community.whatschoolcouldbe.org. I hope to see you there. Today, I am totally stoked to welcome to the show Mahealani Jackson, a remarkable 17-year-old senior at Kamehameha Schools in Honolulu. Joining me as my color commentator is Hannah Grady-Williams, Chief Rebel at DeSkills, who alerted me to this extraordinary young person who was part of her first all-virtual Impact 10 cohort, powering up kids on AI. Mahealani's journey is nothing short of extraordinary. Despite her young age, she has already lived experiences equivalent to multiple lifetimes. From her early years as a skilled planner of Disneyland trips with her parents to her current pursuit of graduating from high school and college simultaneously, Mahealani's story is one of determination, resilience, and incredible self-awareness. In Hawaii, where this show originates from, we have a saying, makahana ka'ike. In doing, one learns. Mahealani lives and breathes and walks in the light of this proverb. In today's conversation, we delve into Mahealani's philosophy of life, shaped significantly by Joseph Murphy's book, The Power of Your Subconscious Mind. Murphy's book has influenced Mahealani's approach to success and her refusal to be limited by others' achievements. In this conversation, Mahealani also shares insights into her educational experiences, highlighting two influential Kamehameha Schools teachers who fostered her growth mindset and created memorable learning environments. As a participant in the first all-virtual DeSkills Impact 10 program, which took place in early 2024 when she was only 16, Mahealani has subsequently developed core skills that make her an instant asset to any company. Her drive for efficiency and unique approach to tasks, even those unfamiliar to her, set her apart. However, Mahealani also candidly discusses in this episode the challenges she faces, expressing that school has become, quote, a burden to my dreams, not a supporter. Ouch. Her words literally hurt my heart. Today's conversation also explores Mahealani's thoughts on college preparation, her vision for a student bill of rights, and her perspective on the role of AI in education, among other topics. She shares her experience helping her boyfriend build a ChatGPT bot for his nursing studies, demonstrating her forward-thinking approach to technology and learning, and her deeply layered humanist tendencies. Throughout this conversation, listeners, Mahealani's self-awareness, critical thinking, and passion for learning will knock you out. Her story offers an open window into what school could be and what could be school, as seen through the eyes of an exceptional learner who is actively shaping her own educational journey and breaking out of the box that is traditional education, which we know tends to crush creativity and imagination. And as frosting on the cake, you will hear previous guest, Hannah Grady-Williams, chime in with her insights on Mahealani, much like a one-person Greek chorus. Frankly, Mahealani, Hannah, and I had way too much fun doing this live-to-tape interview in a podcast studio at the Mike and Sandy Hartley Math and Science and Technology Complex at Mid-Pacific Institute in Honolulu, Hawaii. It was a blast. It's a real treat to be able to bring this conversation to you today, listeners. I hope you enjoy. And now, here is my conversation with Mahealani Jackson. Mahealani, welcome to the What School Could Be podcast.
Oh, yeah. Thank you so much for having me here. I'm super excited.
So with me today as my guest is Hannah Grady-Williams, actually as my guest host. She's the chief rebel at The Skills. Hannah is the reason why Mahealani came onto my radar screen in the first place. So Hannah, thanks for being my guest host today.
I'm so glad we're in person, Josh. This is
It's
so
amazing.
cool. And
Yeah.
I can't tell you how many teachers and superintendents have come up to me since our last episode, and we're just so excited about it. And now we get to have Mahea here, who's a real-life skills rebel. It's just amazing. I can't wait.
This is a milestone moment. And for all of you listeners, go back in the podcast episode list and you'll find my episode with Hannah. It's a doozy. So Hannah, let's take 60 seconds to give us the nutshell on what The Skills is and what it does.
Yeah, so let's start with the problem. We call this problem the AI fluency gap. So Josh, here's what's happening right now in schools and careers is we have this massive tsunami coming, which is the AI era, right? And most people are not prepared for the AI era. So what that looks like in schools is either on the far end of the spectrum, we've got schools that are basically saying AI is just cheating, that they're banning it, hoping it goes away. But even the schools that are slowly beginning to adopt AI and embrace it, a lot of them are using either sterilized versions of AI tools just to get through all the weird data requirements, right? And they're not unleashing the full potential of AI. So what happens is we now have students graduating into our workforce into a place where 66% of employers say they won't hire someone without AI skills, and they're coming to that workforce completely unprepared for the AI era. So our goal is to solve the AI fluency gap by creating amazing AI-powered students like Mahea right in school to AI-power themselves with the skills and mindsets to thrive in this era by creating AI-powered projects like their own internships, their own books, and becoming published authors, and on and on and on, happening right in the school day.
That's awesome. Beautiful nutshell. So what we're going to do today, listeners, is that we're going to have a chance to actually get to know Mahealani Jackson a little bit better. We'll get into the AI part a little bit later in this interview, but I want to have you get to know her because she's an extremely interesting human being. So Mahealani, let's dive in. So you shared with me stories from your growing up years that suggest you have lived a couple of lifetimes already, even though you are only 17. Our time is limited today, but let's have you frame up the most influential moments from birth to age 13 that you feel comfortable sharing with our listeners today. And of course, you got to talk about young Mahea's skills as a planner of trips to Disneyland.
Oh my God. I don't know. There's so much to start. I grew up something I can only see now. Teachers would always say Mahea, you're such, a bright kid. I never saw it. Even now I'm just Mahea. But I never saw that there was a box. I firmly believe that there are big goals, but if I apply myself, there's no reason why I can't achieve them. And, I remember at one point I was 6 years old and I told my grandmother we had a family PC and I said, can I build my own one of these? And she was like, well, yeah, one day, but you don't know how to build a computer. And I was like, okay, well, how can I learn? So I was 6 and I begged my parents for a Raspberry Pi, or I begged Santa, but Santa got it for me. And yeah, it was so cool. It was like a little circuit. You can make it do a whole bunch of different things. And it was really cool at the time. And from there, I was going to the Target toy section to find little mini circuits that were super giant that you could play with and make different things with. And for me, it was just experimenting, creating, getting to that computer science thing. I went into HTML and Python. My 4th grade project was the history of HTML, how it all came about. And so I was always super duper curious as a kid. And even you said, the Disneyland trips, I would convince my parents, I would sell them, take me to Disneyland. Here's the hotel we're going to do. Here's the budget. And when we would go to Disney cruises, my parents would surprise me. And I would say, okay, I'm going to research everything about all the places we're going to. There's a picture of me as a kid holding a poster. And it's one of those divider posters from Walmart. And it's all the different places we're going to, the mythology, all the different things. So I was a little extra kid. I was a little nerd. And that was something that I think made me stand out a lot and made me also, from kindergarten, not resonate with the school system. I just felt so weird in it. But I thought it's how it had to be. I think the most influential thing was when I was 9, my parents first separated, and it turned into, like, for the next almost decade, and still today, a little bit of craziness. My dad was just, we had a very rough relationship growing up, and there was a lot of court involved. Me at 9 speaking against him on the stand, trying to talk to criminal court and attorneys. And so also then having to be able to speak up my mind and say all these things at such a young age, and then also to be dismissed by it because I'm so young, made me feel like I didn't have the potential that I did. I don't resonate with the school system. These big fancy lawyers are telling me, like, you're just 9, like, you don't really know anything. And then just throughout my life, feeling almost inadequate, that something was wrong with me. And later figuring out I have ADHD, I have all these things going on with the school system. I have these things going on at home where, now I'm having issues with my father not treating me or my little sister well. And although I'm out of that situation now, I think it definitely has impacted with the stuff that's happened, just to make sure that I'm empowered and can share that with others to inspire them, that they can become who they want to be despite, feeling inadequate or feeling like others don't see them.
Hannah, one of your distillers who has a pretty meta view of herself and really understands herself well.
No kidding. Yeah, I didn't know that about you at all, and how young things happened for you and how you had to find your voice early. And it's so cool now to be able to watch, like, 9 to 17, your journey just continue to you to find your voice and find ways to advocate for yourself in those really short 8 years, but I'm sure they felt really long
Oh,
for
yeah.
you.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I was also a Disneyland trip planner. So, except it was Disney World because I'm on the East
Oh, my
Coast.
gosh,
So it's
that's
Disney World
right.
trip planner. That's like one of my earliest memories is my parents. I was always the kid with the map in
Oh,
Disney
yeah.
World.
Oh,
Like,
that's
this is
me,
where we're
yeah.
going to go. Here's how we hit everything in the park, towing my 6 siblings along. Anyway, we have that in common. So that's a cool
That's
macro
wonderful.
picture.
Yeah, that's awesome. So, Mahealani, over 135 episodes of the show, I have learned that one of the best ways to get to know guests, who they are, what they think, and what they believe, is through the books they have read. And you cited The Power of Your Subconscious Mind by Joseph Murphy as hugely influential in your life. So, how does your synthesis of Murphy's work provide a window into the mind and heart of Mahealani Jackson, most especially how you choose not to be limited by others' success?
Wow, that's a great question. I think, first of all, I think I have now see other people's success as a blessing. I think that the more successful those around me get, it A, makes it great for them, B, makes it easier for me to succeed. We're all uplifting each other in the world. So I think that has been a big thing for me to realize is one's success is not a lack of my own. As far as I loved reading from a young age, and with everything going on growing up, feeling powerless, hopeless, I was really anxious a lot. And having books give me a sense of this is maybe why you're feeling the way you are, the psychological aspect helped me to understand myself. The Power of Your Subconscious Mind, I came across it probably a couple, like 3 years ago. And a lot of the stuff, the author cites some religious sources, but it's very philosophical. He takes everything with a grain of salt. And he talks about, most importantly, how, the way that you talk to yourself, the way you think, the way you go about your life, and the person you show up as and your self-concept really determines, of course, how you see the results in your life. And it was something that really changed, I think, set me into that orbit, because I was like, okay, even though things have happened to me, I feel out of place in the school system, I feel out of place at home, I feel out of place everywhere. I don't have to act upon that. I can choose to think certain ways, almost gaslight myself into thinking other things. And, after a while, once you gaslight yourself, it really does become reality. Like, I mean, what kid thinks they can go cold call a business, which is one of the things that I started off doing. But I told myself, no, I've always been cold calling. Like, I cold call forever. And then I called, and the second cold call I had, I closed a client. I just believed to myself, like, this is just who I am. I'm a cold caller. And when I have those thoughts and I think those things and I kind of take it in almost as like an identity, and I say, this is who I am. I know I'm empowered. I know I'm this. And I think those thoughts repeatedly, and I consciously make sure I'm in the right mindset. I think understanding it from that book has been super helpful. And it has so many examples and results that have really proven to me how important mindset is.
Hannah, it seems like you're working on fluency and AI, but what you're really working on is no limits.
100%. And a couple days ago, Mahea and I were talking in the car. I was driving through San Francisco. It was super late at night. And we were talking about a new opportunity for Mahea to join DeSkills, help amplify the voices of other students, to help bring DeSkills into more districts. And Mahea told me on the phone something really, really interesting, which is you said, and don't let me quote you incorrectly, but you said, a couple of months ago, I was thinking, one thing with my subconscious, like I imagined certain things happening, like landing clients or having a business.
Mhm.
And then voila, a couple weeks later, I have clients. And then I imagined myself, you take over the story
I
from
literally
here.
imagined myself being on this podcast. I'm not kidding. I'm not kidding. I saw it. This is why. It's like, because I've seen so much results with the way that I think. I just act. I believe something so strongly that I start to act in that way. And because I met you, Hannah, and I was on LinkedIn, I saw that What School Could Be, and I said, oh, they have a podcast. And I was like, one day I would love to be on a podcast, especially this one, because I think of the values, what it stands for, all these different things. And so I would just kind of, and my brain goes so fast, so every now and then I'd be like, oh yeah, kind of cool if I was on that podcast. Oh, I kind of see myself there. And then I just knew, I told myself, well, I probably will be. I'll just let it happen. And whatever. And the next thing I know, literally like 2 weeks later, I got asked to be on it. So that was when I was like, like you said, it's crazy.
You just gave Josh chill bumps.
And we call it chicken skin in Hawaii, where we're based.
Chill bumps. I love that.
I mean, I want to pull back to the macro picture, and then, Josh, you can tell me to shut up if I need to. But I love this so much because, we talk about AI fluency, but what we talk about more is AI-powered students. And what we really mean by that, and what Mahea is showing here, is when you have AI-powered students with AI-powered mindsets, with DeSkills is what we call it, like as the macro picture. When you have a student with DeSkills, what they inherently believe about themselves is they can use every single piece of technology, of learning, of mindsets in the world to help them achieve their goals, their dreams, their aspirations. So what I love about what you're saying, Mahea, is this goes so much deeper than just learning how to use a piece of tech, learning whatever. What you're saying is over the past year, your experiences have led you to believe certain things about yourself and to manifest and to believe in the power of the subconscious mind, things that you want to happen in the future. And by having that belief and using everything in your power to power yourself with DeSkills, you're able to unlock possibilities that every student looks at you and goes, now I want to be like Mahea. So you're
That's
already
crazy.
an inspiration for students, for teachers, for everyone, because in a matter of a few months, you've been able to do things that most people could only dream of. And that sounds kind of cliche, but if we're being honest, that's literally what you're living right now.
That's still crazy. Like even a year ago, I would have never imagined I would be here today. So it's pretty crazy.
Yeah, that's awesome. So it's time for us to dig into a little bit of what you think about education, your philosophy of education. So I think the best way to understand your philosophy of education is simply to ask you to briefly walk us through why two of your teachers, Mr. Troy, your fifth grade teacher, and Mr. Bunger, your algebra teacher, mean so much to you. Like, let's make sure you include, as you talk about them, phrases you shared with me like growth mindset and memorable learning environments, which, frankly, Mahea, are not concepts typically talked about by high school students. So tell us about Mr. Troy and Mr. Bunger.
Mr. Troy was the best teacher ever. Every kid loved Mr. Troy. Every kid wanted to be in his class. And I think a lot of the teachers were like a little taken aback because he was not traditional at all. He only was at my school for a year. It was his first and last year that I had him, but he was the best. He had such out-of-the-box thinking that it encouraged us students to have out-of-the-box thinking. We would see him critically think. We would see him have so much creativity and he encouraged us so much to do hands-on learning. He would bring out all the different props and stuff to show math and money. And he would never just sit there and teach. Every 15 minutes, he understood we were 10 years old, so he'd give us a 2-minute break. And we play games like Ninja or this. He'd come up, and it would be an outside break. So we'd go outside for a little bit, come back in and learn. And every time that we learned, we were always memorizing by moving our hands, moving our bodies, saying things along with him to engage ourselves in the classroom environment. And I think that it was so different from just sitting there in a lecture where I felt included in the process. And like years later, I would use his techniques during tests of like doing the little dances and movements to like remind myself of concepts. And I think what stood out about him and Mr. Bunger was both of them had such a passion for learning in students, and they communicated that so effectively to us students and really showed us that like we care about you, that I think that it made us students feel empowered to care about ourselves.
Mahea, in Hawaii, as you know, I think you know, we have a saying, makahana ka'ike, which means in doing one learns.
Mm-hmm.
It sounds like Mr. Troy and Mr. Bunger were the epitome of that.
Oh, fully, yeah.
Yeah, and we have to talk about Batman and Superman too. You got to mention that, Mr. Troy.
Oh my God, he was the ultimate Batman lover and Superman hater. It was always making little digs at Superman, and he had a little desk all covered with Batman little trinkets, and I would always get him a Batman mug for like Christmas. And he had his little black motorcycle scooter. He called it his Batmobile, and he'd show up to school in all these different cool superhero-themed suits. Every day was a new one. It was so fun for us students. He understood that we were in elementary, and he just spoke to us so well.
Wow, that's awesome. Anna, it sounds to me like what Mahea was experiencing with these two teachers was actually a bit of a setup for what happened when she joined Impact 10, the Makahana Ka'ike idea, although you're managing to accomplish that in a virtual environment, which is really special.
It is really special. And I think what's interesting about Mr. Troy and the teachers you just described is that was elementary school.
Yeah.
Right? Like, it's so interesting to me that elementary school is what you remember because of the Makahana Ka'ike. Don't let me mispronounce that.
Makahana
Ka'ike, that's beautiful.
Yeah.
But Mahea, like the fact that you remember that from elementary school, and I would assume that maybe in middle school and high school there was less and less and less of that because, of course, we got to drill down on tests.
Right.
We got to get you ready for the SAT. We got to get you ready to go to college. Was that true for you? I just don't want to speak for
No, yeah,
you.
I had Mr. Bunger in high school, which was nice to see. He had such a passion for learning. He would give us candy every single test. He would make us homemade cookies. Like he was the best. But yeah, I think that as you get older, you were taught to lose that sense of creativity. I think in elementary it's a little bit more nurtured, but it really gets lost.
So we see that when we built Impact 10, the program that you were a part of, and when we were building the skills, I'll be the first to say we based it on the assumption that perhaps we could pull students back to that type
Right.
of learning, that we'd be able to take them back to an experiential place. And what we found is by the time most students get to high school, that's been ripped out of them. They're so used to being asked for black and white answers. They're so used to being given a pathway to learn where the technology is specified.
Right.
And we had to, as you saw during Impact 10, we have to spend entire virtual sessions helping to give kids permission
Yeah.
to learn through their own failure, through their own experimentation, finding their own stellar examples, as you know, and finding their own tools online. And, I'm amazed by the number of questions that we get during Impact 10 of, can we just use this AI tool? Can we use other AI tools? Guys, yes, of course you can use other tools. Go out and watch on YouTube. You're not confined to the Rebel base. You're not confined to this space. There's resources here, but you're allowed to explore. You're allowed to use any resources. And that was something that stood out so much to me about you. Is your very first week in Impact 10, you started going out and taking what we learned in our 90-minute debrief, and you went on YouTube and you learned more about that topic. And you went and taught yourself cold calling, and you went and taught yourself the things you knew you needed to succeed in creating your own internship and impact projects. And that's a skill that not many students have because it gets sucked out of us in middle and high school.
Hannah, I think it's really interesting you do say that, which is the reason that I think why I was so acclimated to learning outside is because I had to. Because it didn't resonate with the school system, I quite literally had to learn myself outside. So I think I fostered a sense of independence with my learning. And I think that it was both helpful but also hurtful because, right, it's shows how much our school system really lacks giving the students the support they need.
So that's a perfect segue to our last question before we go to break. You shared with me that there are many skills, habits, and dispositions that make you a great hire at any company, but the ones you seem to see as your core kind of DNA, if you will, are your drive for efficiency and the way that you approach tasks, even tasks that you have no idea how to do. You kind of talked about that a little bit earlier. So tell us more. Like, let's have you include the experiences developed while you were in the DeSkills Impact 10 program as milestones on your journey towards understanding yourself and your skill set. And I would love to hear more about the efficiency and about diving into something you have no clue how to do.
I would describe myself as a quote unquote lazy, ambitious person. I feel like I see so many people glorifying hustling, working all day and doing things. And I fully agree that certain things do take hard work, don't get me wrong. But I see people spending that time doing things that I'm like, you could easily automate that. You could easily delegate it, find an AI software, pay like $20 a month to have that just done for you in 10 minutes. So for me personally, I think when I look at situations, I just look at what's the best way that I can get the result that I want in a way that, time is very limited. What's the best way I can use my time efficiently to be able that I maximize the results I get without, wasting what I have. And I think that makes me a great hire along with my drive. I will literally dive into something that I have no clue what to do. Like the documentary. I've never done filmmaking at all. And while there was amazing students that, were like Jacob, who were there to help support, it's been a huge learning experience. And I love learning. I have such a passion for it. So especially cold calling, I was super scared during calling, but I was like, how fun is that? I'm learning something new. I'm trying something out. And yeah, it's just, I'm addicted to learning.
It sounds like in terms of efficiency, you're not seeking efficiency because of something that's annoying you. You're actually on a kind of super fast 60-mile-an-hour journey to learn.
Yeah.
And the efficiency is what aids you in that learning journey, right? Is that a fair way of looking at it?
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
Can I pull back to the macro picture here?
Yeah, go ahead.
So a couple days ago, I flew here to Hawaii from San Francisco. And while I was in Silicon Valley, I met with a company called ServiceNow. They have about 25,000 employees globally, offices in London, Hong Kong, and they're at the very forefront of innovation in AI. They're flying in, massive companies like Dell and Comcast and everyone into their innovation center to talk to them about what they call an intelligent enterprise. Here's what I love about what Mahea said and why this connects. So imagine I'm in this innovation center, right? It's flashy. It's like futuristic, right? You're walking through it. There's a James Bond segment called The Vault where you're sitting in this little tiny space, like a coffee shop space, and then they hit a button and the whole library opens and you walk through into this innovation center. It is so cool. And they take, of course, their prospects and their clients through this vault. You get into the innovation space and there's these massive screens that you can touch to advance your presentation. I'm talking with Simon, the director of innovation, Simon Grice, and I asked him, I told him about you, Mahea, and I asked him this question. As you guys think about who to hire, the type of employees that you want to recruit into your company who are going to push you further, make your company better, etc., would you rather have a student like this, describing Mahea, the focus on efficiency, the focus on excellence, the focus on creativity and innovating with the future and talking about AI and how to powerfully use it? Or would you rather have the student that's typically coming out of the school system, who's more like a fetch a stick employee, right? You have to tell them everything to do, like throw that stick and let them go fetch it. And we had a long conversation about how important Simon believes that students like you are, Mahea, in creating the future of work, because that's how every organization is going to run, is by employees like you who then operate on intelligent enterprises working with AI agents.
And it also sounds like what we really want are students that are coming out of the school system confident, the way that you're confident, in knowing your skills, your habits, your dispositions. And you do feel confident, right?
Yeah, I think after trying so many new things and then like either totally failing, but then I get on an even better path because they fail, like, okay, I don't like this, I'll try this. And then that works out. I've had such, it takes trial and error, but I've realized that when you try so many things, you start to realize that at the end of the day, like trusting yourself that you can be able to handle it and be able to ask for help or get your way back up if something messes up. Just that confidence in oneself, I think, is so important. And I think I want to inspire other students to have that within themselves. They can do anything and not fear failure or worry about what happens if they don't do everything right.
Love it. Makahana Kaike, in doing one learns. Everyone, we've been talking to Kamehameha School's senior Mahealani Jackson. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Do you believe there's a better way for individuals to learn and fulfill their human potential than in traditional schools? If so, then join me on my 2 podcasts, The Future of Education and Future You, where we explore these issues and more. My name is Michael Horn, and I've been working to build a better future for all individuals for over 15 years. I'm the co-author of multiple books on the future of learning, including my latest, From Reopen to Reinvent. And you can also stay up to date with all my writing through my Substack newsletter, The Future of Education. Join me as we create the future of learning together.
What does the future of learning look like? All the big changes going on in tech and society these days are raising tough and fascinating questions about education and where it's going. We dig into those questions every week on the EdSurge podcast. I'm Jeff Young, an editor and a reporter at EdSurge, and I sit down with educators, students, and scholars for frank and in-depth conversations about how education is changing. You can find the EdSurge podcast wherever you listen, or just go to edsurge.com and click on the podcast link. I hope you'll check it out.
Hi, I'm Ricardo.
I'm Mary.
And I'm Liz.
And we co-host Course Stories, a podcast produced by the Instructional Design and New Media team at Arizona State University.
In this podcast, we tell an array of course design stories alongside other ASU online designers and faculty.
Join us as we talk to the course design experts about shaping the future of online education. Tune into Course Stories, where innovation meets instruction.
Find us wherever you listen to podcasts.
Course Stories!
Perfection.
Hey everyone, we are back with Mahealani Jackson, who is driving herself to graduate from high school and college at about the same time, which is actually something that you did, Hannah, right?
No, everything I learn more about you, Maham. Like, well, stars are aligning. You're like,
Yes,
you're like
they are.
10 years back in the past, and like I'm seeing myself.
So Mahealani, as a way to get into your thoughts and feelings about this thing we call school, I'm going to quote something you shared with me that made me literally clutch my heart. In my growing up years, the 70s, people used the phrase, "this slays me." What you wrote slayed me. And I'm talking in the negative sense, just like it killed me. So the quote is, "This year especially, I found school to be a burden to my dreams, not a supporter," end quote. So again, our time is limited today, but it would help our listeners to know the thoughts that surround this incredible sentence and what its context is.
Yeah. I've been working on getting my GPA up. Something that I do talk about is that I was failing high school at one point, borderline. And I was working to get that up. Junior year was good. I was focusing mostly just on school. But then I started to realize, right, you can have the skills, you can do things and support businesses. And I realized that's what I really loved. And we live in a world where, your GPA impacts your scholarship, how much money you're going to get, the college you're going to go to. And so I still do have to focus on that. And now that I know kind of how to best do that, I've actually found, which is something else, the reason why I do think that I got my GPA up wasn't because I was studying more. I just taught myself how school works. And I worked according to that. I stopped trying to fight against the grain. Going into what you said about school being a burden to my dreams, I realized that over the summer I accomplished so much. I got 1 semester done of college. I had my own business. I had 2-3 clients. I was doing so much incredible stuff. The list goes on and on and on. And then as soon as school started, I was still doing those things, but I now had to wake up at 3 a.m. to take client calls. I am already exhausted. I already have like a weird sleep disorder I'm trying to figure out where like I'm always fatigued. So I'm coming into school like trying to figure out how I'm going to get my work done and still follow the things that I love and do the things that I want to do. And so because of that, I started to take a step back and almost like despise school. I mean, I only have 2 classes a day. And I'm super blessed to have that. But I look at where I want to be and I'm like, I love doing this stuff. And I don't really need to learn certain subjects when I already know that I'm building a business. I'm going to be helping Hannah out with some sales. And so those are the things that I want to spend my time studying. And so I think it's been frustrating to me that although I love learning certain things more and nurturing my potential.
Hannah, it sounds like Mahealani is actually sort of bound and unbound at the same time. And she might be in that kind of liminal moment where she's experiencing both at the same time, right?
Yeah. I actually told Mahea yesterday because we were at the amazing Wahine Forum, and the takeaway from the keynote session was how to say no.
Yeah.
Or that there's a moment to say no. And I learned this early in my career that, you're a high potential person with the skills like Mahea. You're going to get every opportunity walking in the door, and learning how to say no and not exhaust yourself to death is a skill. It's part of the skill set. So that's going to be, we'll have to talk more about that over these years because it's real.
Yeah. It sort of raises the question, Mahea, that let's just say hypothetically that I could wave my magic wand and actually you wouldn't have to be in school for this senior year. How would you feel about that? Do you want to be at school and be unbound to do all the things that you want to do at the same time? Or would it lift the weight off your shoulders?
This is going to be so funny. Right before school started, I was like trying to figure out ways, to get my college credit to transfer so that I wouldn't have enough classes. Again, the efficiency thing. How can I make this all work?
Yeah.
And I told my mom, I sat her down and I said, can you please let me drop out? I said, Mark Cuban quit high school his senior year and look at where he is now. And I said, he stopped doing that. He went to college. And my school, which is great, is also you can dual enroll and get your associate's degrees credits. And so I said, I only really have 3 more classes that I need at Kamehameha, but they still will make you take electives and fill out your schedule.
Yeah.
And so I said, if you just let me drop out, Mom, please, I can go to HPU. I can just finish off my associates and then be done with my everything else in a year and a half. And she was like, she was like, and she was like, I would let you do that, but you go to Kamehameha and saying you graduate from there, especially because I'm a lifer, I've been there since kindergarten, would be really nice to say. So I do get that, but I literally sat her down and I was like, Mom, I can get us rich, I promise. Just let me get out of school.
But she came up through the system herself, and so she sees it through that lens.
She considered it, though. She was like, maybe. She was like, I do think you could, but she was like, I just want you to graduate from the school you've been in since kindergarten.
So Mahealani, after reading everything you shared with me in the podcast intake form, this question popped into my brain. So here goes. Here at age 17, a senior in high school, but with a life so much bigger than your time at school, as you've described, where and when are you being challenged by external forces? And where and when are you the one challenging yourself? At its core, this question is about motivation, intrinsic versus extrinsic, but those are buzzwords. So really, where are you feeling the challenge from the outside, and where are you challenging yourself?
That's a great question. I honestly think currently, it's something I'm getting a lot better at. But I think even when I was talking about where I was, because of the environment that I grew up in, I got really bad depression and anxiety. My ADHD was bad. I was getting on, figuring out what meds would work for me. So in my first middle school and early high school years, life just felt hectic. I had all these different, which meds work? I have this, I have that going on. And so going from such a place where I felt like I couldn't even get out of bed to do schoolwork, to even brush my hair or do anything. And being that way since 10 to coming to where I am now, where I love my life. I'm learning new things every day. It literally gives me sometimes really bad imposter syndrome because I'm part of me, part of my identity is I know I'm not that person anymore, but it was such a huge part of my life. And now I'm sitting here on a podcast, and it's something that I just worked consistently for a couple months at. And it's so crazy to see myself where I am today, especially from where I came. And so what I've taught myself over time is that, of course, like, ain't to gaslight myself, and just be like, no, well, my mom's a therapist. She always says, your thoughts are going to tell you things. You have to look at the facts because your thoughts aren't facts. They're going to just tell you things. So you see yourself here. What are the facts you can lay out? And that works really well, but I've just found that understanding that, okay, so maybe I do feel like an imposter. Maybe I feel really weird and uncomfortable that, like, yesterday I was at a Hawaii Business Magazine Wahine Forum. That's crazy. But
Speaking at it.
speaking
on a
at
panel.
yeah.
Yes.
So,
Yeah.
but instead what I've decided to do is that, I think as time goes on, I'm going to really feel more comfortable in that scenario. And what I'm doing is I'm just challenging that subconscious beliefs that I have of myself. And so I realized that what's most important is that I sit back and say, okay, I'm feeling this, but I'm still going to act in accordance to the plan. I'm still going to go ahead and do the things I need to do to become the person I want to be in the next few years.
Hannah, my father, who was a doctor here in Hawaii, where I'm based for more than 60 years, he had a sign over his office door which said, do the job well and you get stuck with it all. And I think what I'm hearing from Mahealani is that she's feeling the pressure of that excellence that you were talking about, because now people, like what happened yesterday at this conference that we all attended, towards the end of the day, an attorney came up and actually asked her to, sort of build a consulting contractor on how to bring AI into the firm. When that starts to happen, I can imagine, and this might be true of other deskillers that you're working with, they're starting to feel that sense of like, oof, boy, if I perform, then people are going to ask more.
Yes, it's real. And it doesn't stop that feeling. The best thing I can tell Diskills rebels like Mahea when they're experiencing this, from whatever age it starts, is looking back. Me, I'm 10 years older. I'm 26 or 9 years older now. So you turn 17. I'm 9 years older. And then I have mentors who are much older than me. And those feelings, they never stop. They never end.
Fun.
You just learn. I know.
Gotta learn how to say no.
You learn how to say no, but you also learn how to use that energy to create the future you want. And you learn when the time is to say no. Because the imposter syndrome, the gaslighting yourself, I do the same thing. And I'm 9 years down the road. And it's still, no matter how many doors open, no matter how many opportunities you have, it still happens. Like, that's still what happens in your subconscious or your conscious. So I just say, I think once you learn to harness it, that becomes your superpower in a way.
Yeah.
Because you're able to understand what motivates you. You're able to understand if you're able to weather the pressure that you put on yourself and that is externally put on you once people see how awesome you are. So I don't know if that helps but I would tell every Diskills rebel that, like, if you're starting to see success, just know that the feelings that you have and the responses you have to it, they don't go away because success keeps coming. And you're always going to have to deal with those feelings no matter how big the success gets.
Yeah.
I'm actually feeling it myself, Mahea.
Really?
I'm now in the driver's seat at What School Could Be, and I'm feeling the pressure now because people are coming at me from right and left. And we're doing such amazing spotlighting work. Look at what's happening here today in this studio around what school could be, that all of a sudden everybody wants to talk to me. Everybody wants to, set up a friendship or a partnership or whatever. And it's pretty intense. And I'm 66 years old and thinking, whoa, but it's an awesome feeling. It feels beautiful.
It's both.
Right?
It's both.
So it sounds like that's what's happening with you.
Fully. I think I was even telling my mom, like, when I speak to crowds, I said, like, I like speaking to bigger crowds more. I'm not talking to a specific person. And then I'm just like, they're just like, people. They're just like little NPCs, little dots, right? And then afterwards, I was telling my mom, it was so weird. I tried to walk out the door and there was almost a line. There was like 5 people wanting to talk to me. And I was like, oh my God, this whole time I was talking to people. And I know that sounds so weird, but I just think that, like you said, people are like constantly coming to me. I'm getting messages every day. And it feels really weird because I think growing up, right, I did feel that sense of inadequacy. And these people are challenging that belief. And they're like, no, you're not inadequate. You're quite adequate. And then I'm like, wow, like, this is such a weird feeling because it's not what I'm used to. And it's them proving that belief wrong.
At What School Could Be, we actually want every kid in the world to at least understand what that experience feels like. You may choose to go live in a cabin somewhere on a lake, and that's totally up to you. But at least we want every kid in the world to have that makahanaka ike feeling in doing one learns so that they can make their own choices about how they move forward, and that. So that's awesome. Okay, so slight left turn here. Let's talk about this concept of college prep. Likely every senior in America is thinking about this right now because we're recording here in October of 2024. So you shared with me the following, and I'm going to quote. It's as if school holds my hand the whole way, and then one random day in May decides to let go. You go from utter dependency on the adults and higher-ups to being almost left in the dust, end quote. So I'm sharing this quote out of context. So provide the context for us. And here you are, a senior at Kamehameha Schools.
A lot of things that we do at Kamehameha, whether that's AP or, we have the dual credit courses, which is, dual enrollment, so you get college credit. It's a lot of we're preparing you for college. And I've always thought to myself, and now that I have friends who are in college and me now taking online college, I've realized that it really doesn't, maybe workload-wise, but even I think the workload for those classes can be excessive. I've heard alumni from my school come back to speak to us, and they're like, if you're doing decently okay at our school, you're going to excel in college because it's nowhere like this. But I think the biggest issue is that college prep doesn't focus on the big things that matter. Is that in college, you have a lot of free time. All of a sudden, you go from being told exactly where to be, lunch here, this there, this assembly, and now you have this whole day to yourself. You just got to be at 2 classes here and there. And so now it's how do you critically think with time management? How do you do all these different things that are actually going to make you be the person you want to be? You're not taught that in college prep. You're taught okay, expect this rigor in your classes. But what about when do I do that work? What is the best time for me to critically think, okay, where do I see myself? How do I figure out where I want to be in a couple of years? How am I going to create that life for myself during this so much free time in college? And so what I think really goes wrong with college prep is, high school, they're holding your hand the entire way. And even if that was the case, you'd think that as you climb up, freshman to sophomore, they'd let your hand go a little. They really don't. And so it's just one day, it's you're on your own, go figure it out, learn how to file taxes, all those things you really need to learn in life. And it's just, you're right into a whole different world.
So wave your magic wand, Mahea, and recreate the high school experience, public, private, charter, doesn't matter. What would you think would be the best way to create a learning environment where college prep wouldn't be like prep? It would just be like college is a possible option.
Oh, that's such a good question. First of all, I think with the way that we're going, college is becoming less and less relevant too. So why are we prepping for something that, students in 5 years may find that it's just easier to learn a skill on YouTube, or find something else that makes them valuable to employers or, use AI to empower themselves. I think in terms of a dream school experience, I think we should spend high school nurturing students' interests, having them figure out what that could be. Because it's already ridiculous that we have to figure out what our career is going to be when we're my age. I'm just 17. My brain isn't even fully developed, and I'm going to choose the rest of my life. And a lot of people around me are just choosing it for the salary or, because the good school has a good program, the status of it.
Or legacy, following in the footsteps.
Exactly. And so when I look at things, I think we have so much requirements. And my school is getting better at this, but we all need basic understanding of reading, math, but why do I have to go up to calculus? Why do I have to go up if I want to be a painter? Why do I have to spend my time in biology and chemistry and physics if I want to be an author? If anything, that should be what college is for. If I want to be a chemist, I can go to college and learn chemistry. But I spent a year in chemistry. I have literally no recollection of anything from that class other than occasionally blowing up things. But there's a sense of not preparing students to understand who they want to be and just telling them, here's who you're going to be. And we're going to craft you into figuring that out.
So Hannah, Greek chorus over here. What are you hearing from her?
There's this old, philosophy in school that the purpose of especially middle and high school, is to give everyone a bit of a taste test of different types of careers. And that way you're making an informed decision when you go to college, right? So you got to go through chemistry, you got to go through biology, you got to go through calculus so that you know, do I want to pursue a science field? Do I want to pursue, a career in whatever it is in high school? There's something fundamentally outdated about that approach, and not the taste test approach, because I think that's quite relevant. There's something fundamentally outdated by saying those are the topics that are going to spark interest and curiosity in our students to get them interested in those fields. What you described was exactly my experience in high school with chemistry, with math. And a lot of this comes down to the way it's taught, right? And we could have that conversation around AI making it more personable. So I actually understood what I was learning in chemistry instead of just remembering blowing things up occasionally. But at the end of the day, we have to ask, in the AI era, in a world where everything can be learned independently, like you're describing, what do those taste test experiences in high school look like? Is it chemistry? Is it physics? Is it whatever? Or should it be test driving an internship, test driving an impact project with a real business, test driving a mentorship opportunity and getting to talk to people in the fields that we're, curious about? So I think it's time, and I'm hearing you say the same thing, to reevaluate what are the taste tests? Like, what are we testing? And what do the careers look like now in the AI era that require us to, sort of think backwards? Like we talk about impact first learning, set the impact and work backwards from it. I think the school system needs to do the exact same thing. Set the impact. What are the careers of today? How are they shifting? Can we make a bit of a crystal ball prediction about the possible directions that they could go? And then embed that type of taste test into high school instead of the taste tests that exist right now.
So Mahea, that's a perfect segue actually to this last question before we go to our second break. And I apologize, this is a big one. It's a 30,000-foot level, but it's a great segue, Hannah. So in my last episode that I just released a week ago, I talked to an amazing educator in Georgia, in Atlanta, who is working with students in the Atlanta public schools to develop what's called a Student Bill of Rights. And I want you to channel your inner founding father, your inner James Madison.
Pull out the wigs.
Pull out the wigs, the white wigs, and all of that, and share with us what you think are the rights of students, what they could be, what they should be. And you see why this is a segue, right? Because we're really talking about what the middle and high school experience could be or should be, but framing it through a sort of, this is my right. These are my rights as a student.
That is a big question. I mean, I first just think about what Hannah's doing, which is amazing, is that she helps us make those impact portfolios, right? Helping businesses. When I first started out, I was just like, I don't even know really what I want to do, but I'm going to choose a skill that's relatively not hard to learn, that I can figure out, use AI to help me with it. And that was web design. And from doing web design, I learned that I don't want to do web design. So even though I completed both of those projects, I just learned I'd rather do more helping businesses with social media. There's no one size fits all. It's new every day. It's super exciting to me. So I think when we have kids, get a taste of certain things, it's great. But I think we need to shorten the amount of time that kids are in school, because I think a lot of the things, whether it's homework, school really is a lot longer than just school. It's when you go home and you have hours of homework. You're spending relatively your whole teenage years focused on school, which is great. You do have to learn. Knowledge is power. That's what they say. But, I do think to some extent also playing around, trying new things. I mean, the best time to try anything is when you're my age, when you're in your 20s. I told my mom, would you rather have me start a business now and have it fail, but I still can live with you and have a place to live, or try it when I'm 50, have a decent amount of savings, but then I'm homeless the next year? So I think that kids don't realize now is the perfect time to take risks, not to play it safe, to try all the different things. And so we had a school environment where kids are, taught to fail. How many failures can you collect? Because at some point you're going to have to succeed. So yeah, be okay with failure. And then to try a bunch of new things. And which is going to stick with you? the amazing people we met at the Wahine Forum all said a teacher inspired them, or a new class they took on the side got them into, human-centered design or graphic design. And I just think, and that was what Hannah was for me, was to inspire me and show that it was possible. And so if school can show kids, what are some things that you just want to try, even if they don't work out, because it's not an end-all be-all. You're a kid. So letting kids be kids, I think, is what's most important.
I just want to be clear that our listeners know that when we're talking about Wahine Forum, the three of us, Hannah and Mahea and I, were actually at a conference yesterday in Honolulu. It was about 1,000 women all gathered at a conference center, and the entire day was spent with these 1,000 women diving into topics that were of interest to them. And Mahea was actually on a panel that we constructed, which was moderated by Hannah, which was titled Women on the Cutting Edge of Digital Technology and AI. So I just wanted our listeners to know what that is. Hannah, I'm actually hearing a Bill of Rights emerging here, and quite astonishingly, perhaps at the very top, is the right to fail, and the right to fail over and over and over again, and to learn from that. That's kind of mind-blowing to me.
It's interesting that you say this, Josh and Mahea, hearing you describe this, because, well, let me tell this through a story. So at the end of Impact 10 or Expedition AI or any of our programs, we take a student survey, right? We want to get students' feedback. We want to understand what they enjoyed, what they didn't love. And it is so fascinating to me how many times the student feedback revolves on, there's the positive feedback, but the negative feedback revolves around, they didn't give me all the tools I needed right there in the guidebook to do what I set out to do. And what I realized from that feedback, and Mahea, you get this because you came through the experience and you're like, I understand this. What they didn't understand, what those kids didn't get, is that is so intentional. In the world of work, no employer wants a student coming to them in an entry-level job and having to outline, these are the 5 tools you're going to be using. They expect you to start with a problem and go find any tool you need to use to accomplish that objective, to solve that problem. That's how you become valuable as an employer. And so what I found as a business owner, as someone curating, we're talking about the Student Bill of Rights, curating these qualities of independence, of learning how to fail, of experimenting, kids don't like it. So if I'm thinking about a Student Bill of Rights, we got to start with the kids who haven't had it drilled into their system that they have to follow rules the way that high school works right now. I'd say if we're building a Student Bill of Rights, we should start with the 5th graders. We should start with the kids who were in Mr. Troy's class like you, Mahea,
Absolutely.
who were still excited and curious and creative, and ask them, what do you want to learn? And base our Student Bill of Rights on that.
Yeah. So the First Amendment to this Constitution, this First Amendment of this Bill of Rights would be, thou shalt not crush my creativity over middle school and high school. You are not allowed to do that. And I'll take you to the highest court in the land if you do try to crush my creativity and my innovation and my natural inquiry and sense of wonder.
Yeah, natural wonder, we all have that. And again, like they always say, you're born with 2 fears, right? Everything else is learned. And like what Hannah was saying, I think what's so great about the skills, it's something that I caught on to, but I think maybe other students didn't, is that the skills isn't necessarily your teacher. They're your supporter, they're your guide. They're there to mentor you throughout the process. If you're super stuck, you reach out, but it's getting you into the framework of thinking to how can I be an entrepreneur? How can I see those impact gaps? And then from there saying, now that you have this realization, how can you go out there and make a difference? And it's not walking you through the steps. It's making you critically think about the steps you're going to take. You're making your own steps, essentially. And so I think that having students, and I think it makes it just harder for, Hannah, people, because all of us students are acclimated to a certain mindset, even for me, because when I want to collaborate with other people, it's like, okay, well, what is the step-by-step? And I'm like, why can't we make our own step-by-step? Why can't we find, the efficiency part, especially with AI? So I think it's going to be really interesting to see how the next 5 or so years play out, especially because I think AI will do a lot more than I think we are prepared for.
That's awesome. So hey everyone, we have been talking to Kamehameha School's senior Mahealani Jackson. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Hey there. Are you interested in hearing weekly conversations with authors, leaders, and practitioners at the forefront of learning and education innovation? Then you'll love the Getting Smart podcast. This podcast amplifies the incredible work being done by some of the most innovative minds in education. Learn new leadership styles, new technologies, new frameworks and mindsets, and get the fuel you need to stay motivated and curious. Together, we can empower all learners to thrive. It's available at gettingsmart.com or wherever you listen to podcasts.
Hi, friends. This is Toy Hirschman from EntreEd. It is my great honor to uplift this excellent podcast, What School Could Be. As always, we are super excited to support innovation in education. We've been lucky enough to feature some of the incredible What School Could Be educators on our podcast. If you are looking to be inspired by entrepreneurs and entrepreneurial educators and other great minds from across the world, check out the EntreEd Talk podcast, and please like and subscribe and leave a review. Thanks for tuning in.
Are you ready to shake things up in the classroom? Then get ready to blast off into the future of education with the Teacher Nerds podcast. Join Joe DiPaolo and Ron Nober as they share their own experiences, as well as talk with guests who are experts and innovators in education. From engaging teaching techniques to the latest educational technology, this podcast is a must-listen for anyone passionate about the future of learning. Subscribe and get ready to learn with the Teacher Nerds podcast.
Everyone, we are back with the skills rebel Mahealani Jackson. You can learn more about her at her LinkedIn profile, which we will provide in the show notes. So Mahealani, this may seem like a left field question, but let's say you wanted to have a chat with William Shakespeare, any topic you want. But of course, he is long dead. How would you use ChatGPT to have that conversation? And just out of curiosity, what is the one topic you would want to ask or talk to Shakespeare about? Like, what questions would you want to ask him?
First of all, I've heard about the Shakespeare from my English teacher, and I was playing around with ChatGPT to see how it would work, and I'm not a Shakespeare person, so I don't know what I would ask him specifically. I might just, my questions would not be that good as like a Shakespeare lover. I'd be like, what was life like or something.
Right.
But
Right.
I think that, I was just telling you guys about like when I have really weird dreams, and I take it with like a grain of salt, but I just asked ChatGPT, like, if you were Sigmund Freud and you wanted to like psychoanalyze everything that I just experienced in that dream, what would you say is like going on in my head? And it would tell me like answers, and I'd be like, oh my God, wow. And so sometimes I do fun stuff like that. But as far as prompting it, like you can go as simple as ChatGPT, if I wanted you to be Shakespeare and I wanted to speak to you and you pretend to be Shakespeare, how would I prompt you? And then copy and pasting that. Or even saying, okay, make that prompt better, but just that's the simple way. Otherwise, you can go as far as like what Hannah teaches kids to do is like you make an AI bot, you train it on like Shakespeare's writing, Shakespeare's history, and upload a bunch of files so that it specifically references that knowledge and how he speaks. But I tried it out this morning, and it was like, I tried to tell it to do that, and it was just, art thou shall not, and I couldn't understand what it was telling me back, and I was like, okay, it's clearly working, because I don't even understand what it's saying. But yeah, it's really fun to do, and it gives kids that learning experience, right, of being able to, of course, it's not really Shakespeare, but I know Conmigo has some things like that my teacher has said that opened her up to AI at least, to be like, oh my God, like it's not, kids aren't just using it in English class to plagiarize. They can use it to like speak with their favorite author, get insight on their poem from Shakespeare. Like, what does Shakespeare think about this? And then I never used Conmigo, so I looked at like pictures because I didn't have any storage to download the app. But you can like talk to Zeus, you can talk to all these different people. And so I think that while it is, like me and Hannah were saying, a kind of more sterilized version of education, the fun part is prompting it to do so because you have more creativity and more critical thinking in that. I think it at least shows teachers that, like, it's not just for cheating. Like, you can talk to, like, Shakespeare if you want Shakespeare, quote unquote.
Yeah. Ask him if he was real.
Yesterday at that conference, after the panel was over and we were in Q&A, you got asked, or the panel got asked, a pretty epic question that raised some concerns about these sort of companions, these AI companions in whatever form, right? Do you have any concerns as we go forward? You're right at the cutting edge of this, and it's fair to ask you, like, how are you feeling about it? Do you have concerns?
Yeah, like I was telling you guys the other day, so like I have ADHD, and sometimes that puts me in complete paralysis. And I always say it's like, I tell my mom, it's like, if I told you to go touch the stove, like, and I said you have free will, my mom knows she could touch the stove if it's hot, but she, like, your brain will just stop you. And so a lot of times it feels like, oh my God, I want to do this, but I just feel like, oh my God, I just don't have enough, like, dopamine to get up. And so I was getting so frustrated one day because I wanted to do these things, but I was like, I keep getting distracted. Oh my God. So I pulled out my ChatGPT, and she's a nice little British woman. And I was like, oh my God, I can't get out of bed. Like, please help me. I have ADHD and OS. I just was like ranting on the phone. I was like, oh, please help me. And she was like, and she was like, wow, I'm sorry you feel that way. You know, she was so sweet and kind. And I was like, wow, yeah, thank you for like, oh my God, so sweet. And then I was like, whoa, like if that just made me feel comforted in like, not even a bad situation. I was just like, can you give me like tips to help me get off the couch? Like, then I'm thinking there are people who, you know, have mental illnesses, who don't have a support system. And so on one hand, AI is wonderful that if you don't have a support system, you don't have access to therapy, you're in a country where, you know, education, mental health resources are lacking, it's now so accessible for you for like, you can build your own AI bot or just simply use ChatGPT. But then it does become problematic because you're depending on the AI. You know, I know I told you it'd be so cool if like we did have an AI like super robotic world because we'd have like Star Wars in real life. But I do think that, you know, having your best friend be a droid is a little weird. So I think that we just have to realize that people are people. But I do think that no matter what, I think it'll make people feel even more mentally unhealthy if they're constantly relying on an AI bot. There's still going to be that yearn for human connection. It's going to make them feel, if anything, more lonely and sad. So I don't think there's too much to worry about, but I think there is a little concern here and there.
Hannah, since you and I started working together almost a year ago now, it's amazing. I have been feeding you lots of podcasts and articles and things which you have very graciously received, and many of them raising some of these issues. Here, with all the experience under your belt at this point, especially with training kids, are there concerns that you now feel like need to be part of the work that you're doing with kids, but also with opening up things like, you know, Impact 10 and Expedition AI, everything that is to skills with adults?
As in opening these conversations with adults as well as the kids? Because yes,
that's where
answer.
A lot of the concerns are, is because the adults are often clueless about what's going on. Yeah.
I think we talked about on our first episode how my goal is to bring the positive light around AI because so much of it is negative. And yet, at the same time, I also have concerns about AI, especially with mental health and the crisis we're already having from digital media and social media. The way I'll put my opinion is this way. I think because we're moving into the AI era, there are two scenarios. One is we go back to the dark ages. And I think that's a real possibility. I really think that as humans, if we misuse this technology, if we allow, you know, the negative forces and the evil forces in the world to get a hold of this and to use it poorly, we're such a fragile planet. We're such a fragile race. Like, it is so easy to take out power grids. Like, I mean, you know, I live in Asheville, North Carolina.
Yeah.
We had a hurricane no one expected come straight through, and places I grew up around are completely gone. Not just destroyed, they're gone. They floated away, literally. So we're so fragile. And I'm reminded of that every day, that humans, that the world is fragile. So we have that option, dark ages. But we also have the option on the other end of the spectrum, which is people embrace this and we lean into our humanity and we learn a healthy way of embracing AI tech, and we use it to AI power ourselves, but not to lose what makes us human. And I may be totally wrong about this or too positive about it, but I inherently believe in humans. And I inherently believe that just like what happened with social media, where we entered a crisis where everyone is alone and there's the comparison happening everywhere, and it's so isolating, that you're going to see humans, as we saw with social media. You have a lot of our generation, Mahea, who goes, I'm just disconnecting from all of this. I'm going to go live on a farm. I'm going to go have community. I'm going to go back to a flip phone. I think we're going to see the same thing with AI.
Yeah.
AI companions can only go so far. AI companions may make you feel reassured. And I honestly think if you don't have a friend there to talk to at the moment because it's 5 a.m. or 3 a.m. that you're getting up, why the heck not use AI? You know, like if it can provide that type of response, then great. in terms of true companionship, I have a strong belief in fundamental, like the way that our DNA is built, that we will come back together once we've gotten through this sort of blitz of, oh my gosh, I have an AI companion on my X account or on my Snap account. That's not going to be enough to satisfy the human need for human connection. And I have a fundamental belief we'll return to that.
And we've done that over and over and over again in
nothing
these
new.
huge disruptions, some of which have been technological. We've come back to our humanity, and that's the hopeful view of it. So, Mahea, I want to stay kind of in the weeds here for a second regarding AI. You helped your boyfriend build his own Chat GPT bot. He graduated from Kamehameha Schools last year and just started University of Hawaii at Manoa's Direct Admit Nursing program. How is he using his bot, and how does the story of his use of this bot support the argument that AI absolutely should not be banned in this thing that we call school?
School, first of all, is fundamentally, what we think of it today, the purpose is, right, to prepare you for the future, to prepare for your career, your job, whatever it is. So I think it already is counterintuitive that we're banning something that is going to shape the future. It's like the driving force. So that already is its own problem in of itself. My boyfriend, I've been with him almost 2 years now, but ever since I met him, he's had a huge passion for nursing. He's wanted to be a nurse, and so he worked super hard to get into UH Manoa's Direct Admit Nursing program. They have like 20 students. It's super hard to get
That's
into.
awesome.
Yeah, so he was working super hard, and he also has ADHD, but he's super smart. He studies a whole bunch, and I think that every now and then he would just get so frustrated because he forgets an assignment, or and he's trying to work up to a goal, or he can't seem to focus, or he just has typical ADHD troubles. And so, especially with nursing school, at least his first year is a little more chill, and human anatomy he kind of took in high school, so he's used to some of the stuff, but when it came to studying, I was like, hey, why don't we make this a lot more fun for you? Because if you have ADHD, you need that dopamine, you need that gamify learning, and so I said, why don't we turn this into a game? And so we sat down. It took us literally 10 minutes, and we had a study day we have a little friend group. It's me and his best friend, Liam, which I met his friend first, and he introduced me to my boyfriend now. And so we all three hang out. We had a study day at my house, and we were all doing homework, and they kept getting distracted, all of us. And they're like, oh my God, I don't want to do this. And I said, let's build an AI bot. I'm going to teach you guys. And then I said, I'll film it for Hannah's documentary. And they're like, oh, okay. And so what I helped each of them do was, Anzu, since he's going into nursing, I said, we're going to make it like a game. So it took us 10 minutes. We opened up the GPT builder, and we told GPT kind of the classes he's going through. I just wanted to show him kind of what he could do. So he said, these are the topics. I want you to make a game. You're going to walk us through a story. When we start, we say we want to quiz. You want to quiz me on something. You're not going to say, what's the answer? You're going to be like, you're a highly professional medical doctor, and the patient comes in with yada, yada, yada. What do they have? What's wrong with them? And then along with that, it would create an AI-generated image. So it's like a whole storybook, kind of like the books you were saying, Hannah. So it was almost like a children's game you were playing, but I was like, oh my God, maybe I want to be a doctor. This is so fun. And so the thing would show a little skeleton and have a little glowy spot. If a patient says they're experiencing, arm pain here, you have 20 seconds or they're going to die. He wants to be an ER nurse because, of course, the simulation, very ADHD. But so then it really engaged him, and he was like, oh, maybe about this and maybe about that. And so as you go through the story, if you get it wrong or you get it right, the storyline changes, and an image goes along with that to match the story. So you get it wrong, and then, I don't know, maybe you get demoted as a nurse, and you have to prove yourself worthy. Can you get this question right? And so it was even fun for me. I didn't even know the material. I was like, I want to try guess. And so just the fact that what I see is that learning is so much potential, and it is so much that can help students of all sorts. And so when I see what the potential is, it's it took us 10 minutes to do. And then I see what school is. And now we're really seeing with AI what school could be, right? So then it just makes me very frustrated that it's not as apparent to educators how easy it can be to really just make learning so much simpler for kids.
Mahea's lucky because, as it turns out, the University of Hawaii's John Burns Medical School and its School of Nursing are both grounded in problem-based learning, and that happened about 30 years ago. And that means that, and also, Hannah, what I love about what Mahea just said is it's like there's three layers here. There's Mahea, well, there's her boyfriend. And then there's Mahea, who's the human companion, who suggests the AI companion. And now you've got this mix of AI and humanity to what you were saying a minute ago, right? So this is pretty cool.
Oh, it's so cool. And I was smiling the whole time you were sharing that example, because now imagine that your boyfriend's type of learning that he built for himself
Yes.
was now something that every single student had, but it was customized to their dyslexia, I work with kids who have autism. I've worked with kids with, imagine you could customize learning to every single individual person, but it's not just an imagining, it's happening in small pockets. The problem is it's not happening at a national scale or even at a statewide scale.
Globally,
anywhere.
I mean, it can be so accessible to so many people in other countries who don't have good education opportunities.
Yep. And the folks who are listening to this podcast, they're going to understand way more after they've finished this episode. So that's awesome. So, Mahea, before we go into the final question, I'm going to hit you with one more of those 30,000-foot level questions.
How great.
But it really came out of my reading of the information that you provided for me in the intake form. And so what are your hopes and fears for the future, especially with regard to artificial intelligence?
Like Hannah said, there is so much hope that I have for it. There's so much fears that I also have for it. I think what stopped me from first getting into AI when I first heard about it is I was like, oh my God, this is kind of scary. And then I kind of saw the way that it hallucinates, it misspells things. You guys have seen the video, it can't even guess how many R's are in strawberry. So I'm like, okay, yes, this thing is excelling fast, but we're way in over our heads. When VR first came out, Mark Zuckerberg had his whole Meta Horizons, the metaverse. We're all gonna. Everyone was like, "Oh my God, guys, we're gonna live in Ready Player One. We're all gonna lose our human. We're gonna live in VRs." And we were not. That technology, it didn't hit as it was go off as it was supposed to.
Right.
So I think that either AI doesn't take off in the way that we're intending because so many people just don't get it or fear it. I think the ultimate worst case scenario is that we don't utilize AI because it has so much potential medical benefits to help with getting diseases early on, education benefits so that everyone becomes better. They have more human capital to offer to society. But I think overall, there's always, of course, the fear of it taking over, all that other stuff. But I realized over time that if anything, that'd be kind of cool to live in a sci-fi movie. At that point, it's going to happen regardless. If that's what we're going towards, no one can stop making AI. Google can't stop because then Microsoft will beat them, right? And then we're kind of in an AI race. Everyone's just throwing AI around. And, if the U.S. bans AI, then, another country is going to just have it ahead of us. So it's, whether you like it or not, it's the future. And so you might as well just use it to your advantage while you can, if that's the direction we're going into. And if not, recognize that it is so much potential, so much to drastically change the way that we live as humans, the way that we work, our lifestyle, that it is something that we need to embrace and start learning.
That's awesome. So, Mahealani, I love ending episodes by having guests shout out to the giants upon whose shoulders they stand. In your case, it is your mother. So tell us about her and what she does to mentor and coach and guide and support you and your sister day in and day out as she does her work as well.
My mother is probably the greatest person ever. I was making fun of her so much yesterday because they went to the beach and I was like, look at you coming in the conference with your beach clothes. And then I was like, oh, let's go, do the parking ticket. And she's like, no, I don't want to walk in there. She's like, no, you made me realize I'm wearing clothes from the beach. And so she is so amazing, though. She's the funniest person, unintentionally. She also doesn't understand humor, which is super funny. I'll say things sarcastically. She thinks I'm being for real. And I'm like, no, Mom. It'd be so obvious, too. And she's like, oh, my God, what? And I'm like, no. So she's the funniest person ever, unintentionally. But she's also super hardworking, super strong. She's a single mother. She has so much stuff on her plate constantly with whether that's, court and family drama or that's taking my sister to so many extracurriculars. Taking, my sister to hang out with her friends, taking me to events like this and podcasts. And I admire her so much because throughout my entire childhood, I look at her, I feel so bad for her. She's been through so much and had to stay super strong for my little sister and I, despite everything literally just tearing her down, no one would listen to her or understand when she would raise concerns about the environment my sister and I were in. She would fight for us all she could, and she still does. But I think that it's been so inspiring to me that she is able to stay strong and she's able to continue on with her goals. She runs her own practice, her own business, and it's been inspiring for me to see. And although a lot of the time she's busy, she's constantly doing things and, trying to make sure she can make everything work, she's always finding a way that she can make time for my little sister and I.
That's awesome. Hannah, I actually have a surprise closing question for Mahealani. But before I ask it, I just wonder, what are you thinking and feeling right now about her, about Mahealani Jackson?
I feel like you're going to get embarrassed all the time about how much praise I'm going to give you all the time, Mahea, because you're just amazing. I think what I'm feeling at this moment is, number one, it's really amazing for me. 16-year-old me never would have thought this, that just a few years later, that I could be an inspiration for someone just a few years younger. I thought I had to wait until I was, an Uncle Josh, 55, 60, 70 before I could really give back. So what I'm sitting here feeling is, look at our table right now. We've got 26, me. We're starting at Mahea. You just turned 17, but let's say you were 16, 26, and 66.
Correct.
And we're just decades apart, and we're learning so much from each other.
Indeed.
Just in this moment, but as we go out into the world and we're inspiring other people, it's just something magical that doesn't happen often. In the real world, I think that's something that we lose. That does happen in education really well, is this multi-generational learning. And, Mahea, we talk about it as like we're native digitals and Josh is natively analog. And
in a digital body. I think.
Well, it's like, just the lenses we look at the world through, and having the physical world, I'm assuming, Josh, like physical world is your first experience in life. Digital is an enhancement.
Yep.
Mahea and I live in a world where digital is first and the physical world is an enhancement. And yet we have two categories of human sitting at this table, having a conversation, all learning from each other. And as we even look at the next generation, the AI natives, that's going to be insane. Like, Mahea, you're already going to be an inspiration as a digital native to the AI natives who are like babies right now, growing up in a world where they're never going to know a world where AI doesn't exist.
That's crazy.
Yeah, it's crazy.
And the fact that we get to have these moments, like, let's keep having them, because as more students come in, AI natives, and we get to pass on what we learn, things, not just the tech we're using, but the way of life is going to shift so rapidly, and being open to that is the best thing we can possibly do as humans.
That's awesome, Hannah. So, Mahea, I couldn't let you go today without this probably more important topic than almost anything else that we've talked about today. If I gave you 4 wishes, I think I already know one of them would be focused on your cat, Pumpkin. Talk to us about this small being you want to live forever.
Oh my God. My cat, I got him when everything in my life started to go crazy. I made a PowerPoint presentation for my mom, and I said, here's why I need a cat. And I nagged her about it forever. And then I said, well, I don't just want a cat. I want my own cat, my cat. And I was like 9, and I gave her a whole PowerPoint. So then my little sister had to get one, and I got Pumpkin. And he's so fat. He's only 15 pounds, but he just looks really big.
That's massive.
That's huge.
He is huge. But he has been with me since he was 7 weeks old, and he is almost going to turn, I think, 7 this year. He is obsessed with me, that cat. If I don't let him in when he wants, he also wants what he wants when he wants it. So if I don't let him in, he'll and I'm a deep sleeper. So sometimes I forget to let him in my room. He has to sleep with me or else he won't sleep. And then he'll just cry outside my room so loud that he loses his voice for 3 days. He plays fetch, opens drawers. He's an amazing cat. And he has been the biggest supporter. And I think a huge animal lover. I'm like, I love humans so much, and I also love animals. They're like wonderful companions. And despite learning in just generations, we can learn from like animals. I think they're so carefree. I think about my cat. He just sits there. And I'm like, we think we always have to be busy and doing all these things. Cats just exist and they love life. And like, I could just sit on a, couch and purr and do my own thing. It sounds so nice. And I think that it makes me realize that, to take things slowly, to like, I learn a lot from my cat. It sounds super funny. But yeah, and he also teaches me boundaries. He likes to hit me if I don't, respect him. So I think we learn a lot from everything around us, and we need to see everything as a learning opportunity. So if I could have my cat live forever, I think I would become a genius, like a philosopher in like 100 years.
That's awesome, Mahea. Actually, when you shared your stories about Pumpkin with me, it really brought home for me that as we live this accelerating digital AI life, it's our animals, our pets, our friends that are going to matter more than almost at any point in our history as human beings. And I think it's actually really cool. And I hope we can get that classic photo so that when we release this episode, we can actually have you and Pumpkin together. We'll blow it out across social media.
Pumpkin makes a documentary appearance in the Discills documentary, which made me so happy.
You saw the day in the life video. He legit, every Discills Zoom, he loves Zooms, by the way. I don't know why. I do my digital, the therapy on Zoom, and he has to be there, sitting on my lap watching, and he pokes his head up at times too. Yeah. So during the Discills Zooms, he would just cry if I didn't let him in. He knew what time they were because cats are very schedule oriented. Every Sunday I had to let him in my room, or else he would he wanted to learn digital skills too. But yeah, he would sit on my lap and be like, what's happening?
That's awesome. Before we close out today, I just want to acknowledge that this episode could not have happened without John Pennington at Mid-Pacific Institute. We are in the Mid-Pacific Institute Hartley Center audio studio. And so, John, if you're listening, we super appreciate you and all the work that you did to help set this up. And I also just want to acknowledge, because I've actually never done this in an episode before except in the intro, that the editing is done for this show by the very talented Evan Kurohara, who is also, by the way, a Kamehameha Schools graduate, Kamehameha Schools, Hawaii Island. And so, Evan, thank you for all the hard work that you've done over these last 2 years to bring this podcast up to what we think is NPR gold standard quality. So Mahealani Jackson, Hannah Grady-Williams, thank you for being on the show today.
Whoop, whoop. Thank you.
Our editor, creative consultant, and sound engineer is the talented Evan Kurohara. Our theme music is created by a remarkable pianist, Michael Sloan. Producer of 12 albums with over 100 songs, Michael Sloan is featured in Apple Music, Spotify, and all major music platforms. You can also find his work on his YouTube channel. Michael has listeners in over 100 countries and 2,000 cities. We'd be grateful if you would support these episodes with leading edge, innovative and imaginative educators and students by giving us your own rating and writing a review wherever you get your podcasts. This series is sponsored by Education Change Agent, Ted Dintersmith, executive producer of the award-winning documentary film, Most Likely to Succeed, and author of the best-selling book, What School Could Be. If you are committed to rolling up your sleeves and joining thousands of educators, business professionals, nonprofit leaders, and parents as we reimagine education to be relevant and learner-centered, please join the What School Could Be global online community. Simply log in to community.whatschoolcouldbe.org or download the What School Could Be app from your favorite app store. The What School Could Be podcast is brought to you by Josh Rapoon Productions. Send your feedback to josh@whatschoolcouldbe.org. Follow the show on Twitter @WSCB Podcast and on LinkedIn @Josh Rapoon. Listeners, one of the most important things we all can do is to bring kindness and compassion into the world. For sure, we need a surplus of both right now. Until next time, ahui ho, and thank you for listening to the What School Could Be podcast.